there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love talking to creative people about their work and their lives and how they keep it going. And today my guest is a filmmaker. His name is Tomás Gómez Bustillo. He's from Argentina, and he has a movie out called Chronicles of a Wandering Saint. And the first time I heard about this movie was on this very podcast. It was our year-end wrap-up earlier in the year when we were talking about the movies of last year with Glenn Gaylord and Drew Droege. And Drew said that one of his favorite movies that he had seen all year was Chronicles of a Wandering Saint. Well, it hadn't come out yet. He had seen it because it was nominated for 3 Independent Spirit Awards, which I'm not sure how I got nominated for that year. But anyway, it was on my radar because of that. And then I got sent a press release about it, and I was like, I'd love to see a screener. I watched it. I was like, I fell in love with this movie. It's set in a small Argentine town. It's this older woman who wants to feel... She goes to church, and the other women are not that nice to her, and she wants to kind of show them up. So there's a little scheme that gets cooked up that she tries to sort of make herself seem more holy. And halfway through the movie, things go in a direction you're not expecting. And from then on, it becomes this sort of wonderful, magical realism exploration of faith and love, and it's just beautiful. It was just enchanting. I was like, this movie is delightful, and so I was able to get an interview with Tomás. Oh, I also want to say that the movie is showing in Los Angeles this coming weekend at the American Cinematheque. I'm going to be going on the 6th in Los Feliz. It's also showing on the 8th, and then it's going to different cities from there, and then eventually it'll be all over the place, but you can follow its journey at chroniclesofawanderingsaint.com. But it was really probably my favorite movie I've seen this year. So there's that. But before we get to the interview, I want to let you know that this podcast, Dennis Anyone, is brought to you by me. I do it. I love it. It brings me so much joy and fulfillment, but it does take a lot of time and a little bit of money. So if you want to help support the effort, there are a few ways you can do that. You can go to DennisAnyone.net. There's a virtual tip jar button there. You can click on that and leave me a tip in my virtual tip jar, or you can do what's called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just enough for a coffee or 2 or 3, and I love that. It brightens my day, and, I do love my coffee. The other thing you can do is become a subscriber to DNRstudios.com. I'm part of a group of shows under the Derek and Romaine banner, and for a monthly fee, you get my show early, and you get all these other great queer shows, and you can learn about that at DNRstudios.com. All right, that's enough of the plugs. Here now is my interview with Tomás Gómez Bustillo. Joining me now via Zoom from Los Angeles, it's Tomás Gómez Bustillo. He's the writer-director of the movie Chronicles of a Wandering Saint, which is my favorite movie that I've seen this year. So welcome.
Wow, thank you. I didn't know you were going to say that. It's really nice of you.
Yeah, I didn't spring it on you early. I wanted to see your face when I actually said it. No, it's really original. It's really funny and moving. It's cool. It's unique. But before we get into the story of the movie and what it's about, you were nominated for 3 Independent Spirit Awards that were this year. So it's coming into theaters now. I'm just curious as to why it wasn't nominated this coming year. I guess the indie spirits are ahead of the game in every way. They're just
honestly, it's actually not something that happens very often. It tends to be the other way around, right? Like you release the movie and then the awards bodies consider you. But honestly, we've been doing things like the weird way, the like indie way, this whole time from the get go. So we couldn't do it the normal way.
Right.
I'll just do that. Yeah.
It's very on brand for your movie to break some rules. Yeah. Every year on this podcast, I do a year-end movie wrap-up episode with 2 friends of mine who are film lovers. One's a film critic named Glenn Gaylord, and one is an actor and writer named Drew Droege. And Drew raved about this movie. I guess he saw it as part of the indie spirit voting
that's
panel.
Right.
But so it was totally on my radar. I was like, oh, this is the movie that Drew loves. So I was thrilled to finally see it. How do you describe the story to someone that knows nothing about it?
I just say kind of like a little bit of what the plot conceit is, and then I leave it at that. I'll just say like it's about Rita, who is an elderly lady in a very, very, very small rural town in Argentina.
Yeah.
And she's super competitive with the other ladies in town to see who's the most pious.
Yes.
And she's so competitive that she decides to fake a miracle in order to give herself like the most credit. And then that's usually where I leave it because I don't want to get into the rest when I like pitch it, you know?
Yeah, no, it's great. The actress who plays Rita is named Monica Villa, and quite well known in Argentina. She was in Wild Tales, right?
She was in Wild Tales,
which I love that movie. Who was she in that movie?
So she's in the very first short, because it's like 5 shorts.
Yeah.
And they all, like, every short has like a ton of cameos, like really well-known Argentinian actors. And so she's in the very first short.
I have to go back and look at that movie. I thought for sure they would try to do an American remake with big stars, and it never happened, but probably for the best.
I'm surprised they didn't.
Right? It just seemed like it's going to be like a thing that happens. She's wonderful.
She's amazing.
She conveys this sort of, it's almost like a Mean Girls vibe between her and the other girls, but they're these old women in this Argentine village, but they're practically the plastics, and she's kind of on the outside. And the thing that she captures that tickles me so much is this need. Like she wants so much, but she's got a very humble life, but she's like bursting, right?
Yes.
To have more, or to be thought of as, you know, more pious or whatever. Talk about getting her as your actor, the lead actress, and what the qualities are that you love about her.
I mean, she was kind of a godsend, you know, like in the sense that she's kind of like the best case scenario for this role for us. And, you know, my DP was the first one who suggested her. And I was like, yeah, but we're never going to get her. She's so big, you know, she's so great. And he was like, you know what? I went to school like with her son. Like we're not like best friends or anything, but I can shoot him a text and we can try,
right?
You know? And I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. Why not? And so we shoot him a text. He's like, sure, I'll give you my mom's phone number, but you guys take it from there. And so it's pretty much at this point, I call her randomly, like almost like a spam kind of caller. And I'm like, hey, I'm a director. You don't know me. Like, I've never directed any features, but here's the story, you know? And I kind of told her a little bit of the story. I did like the elevator pitch over the phone. And she was like, okay, I'm interested, you know, like send me the script. And I sent her the script, and she read it that day, and she said, I'm in. And, you know, there was no questions about her commitment ever after that. So it was really magical, because here I was like incredibly nervous working with like, you know, like a superstar in Argentina.
Right.
And all of this experience and all of these credits, she's been in so many like cult films in Argentina. Like, people know her everywhere. And I'm like this like baby of a director that's never done anything, you know? And she was so generous and open, and she was such a huge part of my film education. And honestly, we became so close during the whole process that she's like a family member for me now.
I love to hear that. And it's not like you're in the city making a movie and you're out in this village, and it almost feels like you're going back in time, and she has to do some very unusual things. It seems like you're either gonna bond, or it's gonna be really uncomfortable.
I will say for her, like, she was the most committed person on that set. You know, it was like 4 a.m. She's standing in like a pool of water, you know. She hasn't slept very well. You know, we're staying at a hotel very far from her house. We have like these like insane shooting schedules, like from, you know, like 3 p.m. to 6 a.m., you know. And she's the most committed person, like every single take. And that's props to what an incredible professional she is.
And her performance, there's just this fierce drive within her that is so poignant and touching. And the movie goes to some surprising places. There's some elements of magical realism. And I think when we think of that in film, we think of, oh, you need a lot of money. You're going to have to do CGI, or you need to, like, you know, if the house is going to fly or whatever it is. You have elements that capture that spirit, but they didn't break the bank, right? I don't want to give too much away, but I just wanted to comment on that aspect of the film, because it's magic, but it's simple, and it's probably not that expensive, right?
Yeah, I think honestly it does come down essentially to a magical realism as a genre.
Yeah.
Because it's like with fantasy, we would really have to blow those elements up. They would have to be huge, because that's when you're like building an entire world, or that's when the plot or the film is like really focusing on those elements. But with magical realism, it's kind of the opposite. Those magical elements become like the everyday backdrop of these characters' lives. And so the approach also has to be kind of the same, like mundane and trivial and nonchalant. So that's where we could use being so indie to our benefit.
Right. And it comes across beautifully. What was the germ of the idea for you? What, like, this isn't like, oh, this is my story that happened in school. This is like a really unique story. Where did it come from?
Well, honestly, I think it comes from a couple of different places, but the very, very first kind of thing that popped into my head was just an image. And it was this image of a person who was made of light, who was like wandering around like a very dark space, and like felt very lonely. And so I started to like investigate what that image meant to me and why it would pop up in my head. And then I started linking it with this Argentinian folk legend, or South American folk legend, which is called La Luz Mala, the bad light. And that legend says that whenever, like in this area where we shot the film, it's the region itself is like the agricultural region in Argentina, which is called La Pampa, and it's like very, very, like they're plains, right? Like endless plains. And so at night you can see as far as the eye can see in the darkness, right? And so sometimes people claim that they see flashes of light in the distance, and folk stories attribute it to a spirit that is wandering around, kind of lost in between different realms. And so those two, that image, that legend, and this particular town that I knew very, very well, all kind of collided to become the story that was the film.
And then, did you live in that town? Is that how you knew it?
No, actually, I grew up super Catholic, in a very Catholic family. And during my like late teens and early 20s, I used to be like a missionary, like in a Catholic missionary, and would just go to this small town with like my group of missionary friends. And we would like just hang out with these people. And the only people that ever came out, to hang out with us were the elderly women, especially. So, I got to hang out in this particular town for like 4 summers and winter breaks in a row during college. And then, I stopped being Catholic, but the affection that I had for them, and that also just how much that place had meant to me stayed.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that you were Catholic, but don't really identify that way anymore. There's an affection for religion, but it's also poked fun at a little bit. It's like not an anti-religious film. It's just all these things are sort of played with in really fun ways and ways that are kind of moving and poignant. So I can see how that all sort of comes together. There's something that happens about halfway through the movie. I'm not going to say what it is, but I am curious. Are there people that said, you can't do that?
Yes.
And what did you tell them?
A lot of people. A lot of people who said like, not you can't do that, but you'll never do that. Like you'll never.
It's never going to, not on my watch, over my dead body. Yeah. How did you fight for it? Or how did you prevail?
Honestly, the movie kind of just purged those people out of the existence.
So it's not like you brought them over on your side. They're not on the train anymore.
No, yeah, it's like, eventually the movie found its supporters that it needed to find, and those people that maybe wanted to put the movie back in a box that they could categorize kind of eventually just kind of lost interest.
Yeah. We mentioned that there's magical realism elements in this movie. What I liked about some of the way you depict things, I think when we imagine things like other planets or the afterlife or things that we don't know about, we imagine that everything's going to be smooth. Everything's going to be high tech and wonderful. And in your version of this, it's laminated pages in a notebook. It's like very like logistics are kind of subpar. Like it's kind of like, like sometimes you'll go to an old government building and it's like the elevators have never worked. Like it has like that sort of like, oh, I thought everything was going to be slick and fast and easy. And no, it's a guy with a Bluetooth that trying to make it work. You know what I mean? I just found that so charming. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about it, but I just wanted to pay you that compliment.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, it just has to do with, again, like, you know, not to beat like this over the head, but I love magical realism, and like, it's not my creation per se, because if you read 100 Years of Solitude, that's exactly the way it's approached. Like, you have all these fantastical elements, but they're so mundane, they're complicated, they don't work very well. Like, you know, they're trying to do alchemy, but it doesn't work super well.
I just liked how the fantastical things were not slick. They were kind of like subpar and, like, you know, not state of the art, right?
That's exactly right. And I think it's just at the end of the day, it has to do with, like, my influence in Latin American magical realism, and it's particularly like 100 Years of Solitude, which is one of the main references for the movie, in which, like, I was mentioning this, like, they're trying to get out, like, you know, to produce, like, alchemy, right? But things go wrong and they don't get it right. They produce the opposite effect that they intended. And that's kind of what feels like true to us as Latin Americans, where it's like the third world version of fantasy, right? It's fantasy that doesn't work the way it should. And so you have to patch it up and kind of like make it work somehow. And that's kind of our experience as Latin Americans. So it feels very funny to us because it's real, you know?
Right. It's fantasy on a budget.
Exactly. Fantasy on a budget. I like that.
I think my favorite scene is a scene where Rita learns from somebody in this world how things are going to go. And I love the performances, but I also loved her face as she was listening. Like, she has to play this completely. There's something surreal going on, and she has to play it 100%, you know? And there's just something very moving to me about her in those scenes. Like, she's all in.
I think that's kind of, I remember writing that scene, and it just kind of like came out, and it's just like, I really imagine, you know, like in the movies in general, let's say like an alien comes down from the heavens and like presents itself in front of you. In the movies, you know, it's like a blast of smoke and like red light and
all the doors go, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And like the thing comes, like the platform comes down and the alien, like in this low booming voice, you know, and then you're like, hello, welcome to Earth. Like, I'm here, you know, like, we want peace, not war. And you get into this whole, like we are humans, but most likely, you know, if an alien landed in your yard, you'd be like, get the hell off my yard. I'm calling the cops, you know, like you would be stunned and would just be like, I don't know what's happening here. I'm just going to like cower in fear and not say anything. And hopefully they don't say anything to me, you know? And so those more human reactions felt like the way to go for Rita in that scene.
I found it very charming. You know, it's like, I was thinking recently, I was talking with somebody like, what happens when we die? You know, and I was like, we think it's going to, if there is anything, we think it's going to be like smooth and cloud. I don't know. What if it's just some guy with a clipboard and the Wi-Fi doesn't work and his pen isn't working? That might be what it is, you know? And you're like, oh man, this is worse than Earth.
And so if you think about it, maybe this is already the alien planet, you know, and like that's kind of the consequence of bringing fantasy into our world and making it not work. As like, perhaps this is the other world already, you know, and we just don't really realize it. You don't see this as such because we're so used to it.
Yeah. There's a wonderful actor that plays her husband, Horatio. What's his full name?
Horacio Marazzi.
Yeah. When you're communicating with the actors about these things, are they on the same page with you, or are there a lot of conversations where you're kind of like trying to get at your vision? Because it's not pure realism. It's heightened.
I think, honestly, a lot of the conversations that I have with actors happen beforehand, before going to set. And a lot of the work that I'll do initially is just to give them the right references, right? And so it's like, watch these 3 movies, and then you'll understand a little bit of the tone of where I'm going, as opposed to how you might like read it on the script, or, you know? Yeah. And honestly, like, so much of the groundwork is laid by those reference films, because they're like, oh, okay. I read it like this kind of humor, but you're going in this direction, and I understand that. And so once you establish a general direction, then it's really, the work is more about like letting, they can bring in their craftsmanship in that direction, you know, and then we polish and we try different things, and different takes are about trying different things. And it's very fun. It's very exploratory, and you don't have to have these like big conversations on set, which is what you're trying to avoid.
Right. They're already on the same page. What are those touchstone films that you found valuable?
So it depends, because for every department, I would give people something different, right?
Oh,
so
I love
for
that.
the actors, for example, there's this incredible film from Uruguay called Whiskey. And if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It's from 2004, and it was at Cannes, and it's like the loveliest film.
Yeah.
And the humor is absolutely on point, and the performances are on point. But if not, like Aki Kaurismäki was a director that I would point them to. Roy Anderson, there's like a little bit of that deadpan kind of comedy that I was really trying to give to the actors. A lot of them watched also Le Samurai, the Melville movie, where Alain Delon literally doesn't say anything at all. It's a very deadpan, right?
Yeah.
So I was pointing them in the deadpan direction. But like for the cinematographers or the production designers, I would give another set of references. And with sound, another set of references. So it's very fun for me to be able to juggle all of my geekiness towards film and point it in different directions.
When did you fall in love with film? Do you remember those early things where you're like, wow?
That's a great question. And I don't know that I don't have like a prepared answer for that, you know? Like,
what if you said, I'm not in love with it? I just did this for the hell of it. I just did this because I wanted my life to be hard and challenging.
Exactly. Oh, because I was in it for the money, because indie film is definitely the money. Honestly, I think as a kid, as like just watching, like my parents would say that I would wake them up every single morning at 6 a.m. because I wanted to watch like 101 Dalmatians and Peter Pan. So like, you know, that I don't even remember that. I must have been like 3 or 4.
Right.
So, but then, you know, I remember like early film experiences, like watching Fantasia, like the Disney movie, which blew my mind. Like when I was like 6, you know, and I was like, what is happening here? Like, I don't know.
That's deep Disney. That's sophisticated Disney for 6.
Deep Disney. Deep Disney. But I think it's really cool because since it doesn't have like a plot line, you can just soak in it, you know? And as a kid, you're just like dreaming along with these like, you know, dancing hippopotamuses. And you're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, you know? And then I could go on, but honestly, like falling in love with film probably happened around that time. And then deciding to pursue film happened a lot later, like probably more in like my early 20s. And
what were the instigators for that decision? I know you went to AFI Film School here in Los Angeles, right?
That's right. Yeah, but that was later. That was more like mid 20s, late 20s. So in my early 20s, what happened was I started making music.
Right.
While I was studying political science in Argentina, and when I started making music, I got really excited about sharing it with friends and family. And then I was like literally about to hit an upload button with like a blank black video, you know, with my music. And I was like, this is so boring. I should make like a little something to go with it, you know?
Yeah.
And that thought like changed my life, because I was like, you know what? Like my friend has a camera. I was like living in these like college dorm type things. I was like, my friend downstairs has a camera. If I ask him for a camera, I can just go shoot something, you know? And so I closed my eyes. I imagined something to the music. Right. And then I was like, all right, let's go. And we shot like my very first short film. And then that process was so addicting that I did it for years. Like, during college, I would just make music, come up with a music video, make music, come up with a music video. And eventually I didn't even care about the music anymore, because I was not a great musician. I just cared about the making of the movies. Right. And at some point they were getting so sophisticated and elaborate that a friend pulled me aside and was like, I think you need to do this like for a living, because like you really love this. Like you're sitting in the back of the class, like the teacher is talking about, you know, like comparative, you know, political theory. And there you are writing a script and like planning like your production. And it's like, why don't you just do that? You know? And I was like, that was a wake up call moment. Yeah. And that was kind of the beginning of this.
That's very cool. Who was the friend? A classmate or just somebody you know?
It was honestly like a friend of a friend. It wasn't even somebody that like, I remember her face, but I don't remember her name. And it's like somebody who just had to pass in my life to say the right thing at the right time, and then just like leave,
and then just disappeared. Yeah,
and just disappear, and you never know what kind of influence you're going to have on people. Even if you meet them like 3 times, and like, this was like the 3rd time that I ever saw her and never saw her again.
I love that. So you knew you were loving it. When did you realize, oh, I can kind of do it? Like, when did you feel like, oh, I have something to say. I have a skill for this. I have a knack for it.
I don't think I've realized that part yet.
You know?
I'm still figuring that part out. No, I mean, it's like, it's just like, I would say maybe with the premiere of this movie and this experience, because until then I was, a film school graduate and not like a film director or writer, And I think when the movie started to premiere and people started to connect with it and people started to bring like their emotions to it, that's when I was like, wow, this is really something. Like not that what I did was really something, but like the experience of making movies and sharing movies with people and that connection that you get to have is so unique and special. And like that's what gives me like the drive to do it all over again.
Well, with this movie in particular, because it's not a sort of formulaic thing. And so I would imagine being you, and when you're first starting to screen it for people, going, gosh, I hope they go on this ride with me, right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Were you nervous the first few times? Like, what was it like?
Oh yeah, I was freaking out. Like I was a nervous wreck, like so nervous. I could barely stand up in this theater while I'm looking at their faces, watching my movie.
Where were you? Where were the first screenings at?
The first screenings, like with like the general public, were at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. And honestly, it's what a great festival to premiere in because the people are awesome. The South by crowd the South by team is amazing, and the South by audience is amazing. So it's like such a cool place to because people really, they show up and they support and they're ready to watch movies and be challenged by movies. And as soon as I started to hear people laughing, I was like, okay, maybe this will work, And then when I started seeing people with that moment in the middle react the way they did, and then and especially at the end when like you're hearing some sniffles and that's when I was like, wow, okay, it happened. Like I made a real movie,
Yeah. Well, and also the moment in the middle that we alluded to, there's an echo of it at the end where you're kind of like, oh, okay, let's see what's going to happen now. And then that's kind of satisfying. And you feel like as an audience member, oh, we did something different together. I don't know. There's a feeling of, you feel like you're an accomplice to this norm busting, which is really cool. People are probably listening to this going, what are they talking about? But I don't want to give it away. Anyway, you are nominated for 3 Independent Spirit Awards. Congratulations. Thank you. You're in the tent with probably all these people that you
oh my God, yes.
admire. Who did you meet? Who was at your table? Who was nice?
Honestly, the whole experience is such a blur to me because it was like the most adrenaline-inducing experience that I've had till now, probably.
Right.
Also because I'm particularly afraid of like public speaking. And so I was like, I hope I don't win an award because I do not want to get up and like on a stage and speak in front of like Will Ferrell,
Right.
And I don't know if I can do that, I don't know if I have it in me. But, at my table, I think I got there so late because the whole red carpet thing was, I didn't even get to introduce myself to anybody. I didn't even get to, like, the show was already starting by the time I got to the table. So, because we had gotten out of like a photo booth and stuff like that, we ran like really late. So, but the red carpet was really crazy because we were walking, like just ahead of Jessica Chastain, and I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
There's like a pinch me moment.
Right. So you got nominated for best first screenplay, best first feature, and cinematography?
That's right. Those are the 3.
Awesome. What won best for first feature? I'm trying to remember.
I think it was 1001, which is an incredible movie.
Right.
I mean, she totally deserved to win that movie because when I saw it, I was like, that's going to be the winner.
Yeah.
I knew it, and I was like, okay, she deserved it. Absolutely.
Right on. You don't have to storm out in a huff, after all.
No, I'm not outraged at all. I was like, yeah, of course, absolutely.
You went to AFI, and I read that you've started a production company with some of your cohorts from there, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I think that would be one of the coolest things about going to film school. I used to have a fantasy about doing that, and is the people you meet and that you come up together and you help each other, right? And that's like the whole thing to me in a way. Do you find that?
Like 100%, because you think you're going to film school for the knowledge, that you're getting the know-how and the skills, and you do, but you're nothing without your collaborators, and you're only as good as the people you have around you. And that's the coolest thing, is to be able to grow up together, you know? And we started this production company, and for so long it felt like a fake production company because we hadn't done anything. And now we're really working, and we're getting stuff done, and we're growing together, and it feels really special. And I hope we can continue to do that.
And is it called Plenty Good or Good Plenty? Like
Plenty
Good.
Yes.
Where did the name come from?
I really don't. I don't remember. We were just spitballing like crazy names, wacky names, and this one just kind of stuck and felt right. And eventually, you know, it couldn't be anything but that.
I love it, and I like the font, the logo, solid, nailed it.
Thank you.
It's important.
We worked hard on the branding.
Yeah, it's important. Branding. You know, if it's the wrong font, you know.
Yes, 100%. Very important.
It's very important.
It's a lost art.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you some fun questions about movies I sometimes like to ask people. What movie have you seen the most times?
Probably 2001: A Space Odyssey.
And why do you keep going back to it?
Because it's perfect. It's the perfect movie. Like that's for me. It's like that's what I'm trying to do my whole life. Maybe I can get to like 10% of what that movie did.
Right. What movie did you see when you were too young to see it?
Oh, that's a great question. This might be a weird answer, but I actually think Lion King, you know, or you're like, initially you're like, no, Lion King is a kid's movie, but you're like, yeah, but it's actually pretty devastating emotionally, you know?
And a lot of those Disney movies are like Bambi.
Yes.
Sometimes they're like somebody parent dies in the first 5 minutes. You're like, wait, what? Yeah.
Yeah. And it just shocks you to your core. So the moment that Mufasa dies, I'm like, it felt like losing a relative, you know, because I was so deeply in it. And I also saw it like in huge theater, like packed. I was like 4 or 5, you know?
Yeah.
So it like really, really impacted me emotionally.
What movie costume do you wish you owned so you could wear it around the house?
Oh man. That's great.
I'll do mine while you think. Mine would be like John Travolta's Saturday Night Fever, but not the white suit. The one of the earlier ones, like the rose-colored disco pants and the polyester shirt. And in this fantasy, it fits perfect. So you don't have to worry about I could never pull that off. That's not part of the question. So
I think I know what to answer. I would say the movie Amadeus.
Yes.
And the part where Mozart is like directing the symphony in front of everybody. And he's just got this like incredible costume that I'm like, that's one of the best costumes. And then his wig. And I was like, wow, to look like that. I mean, you would definitely be like, you know, the center of attention. And so I would definitely, I would want to try it on at least, see what it feels like.
Right on. So did you complete school for political science and then go into film? Yeah.
Technically, you're speaking with a political scientist, even though I don't know what I could possibly do in that regard, but it is true.
Would you ever want to make a movie in that world using that, connecting those two things?
I definitely would. I think the coolest thing about political science was like, it's a broad enough career that it can like, it really gave me like the opportunity to explore a lot of different interests that I have.
Yeah.
Especially like more about like history and philosophy, which are like my two biggest, like, so I think film also gives me the opportunity to explore any interest that I have because it's like literally just a medium and not like the content itself. So I definitely would love to explore. I actually think in some ways, like I am exploring like culture, like philosophy, and history in some ways, but it's just not so overt. It's just kind of like, the backdrop to everything, I guess.
To what you're doing. I co-wrote a feature film once called Testosterone, and we shot in Buenos Aires. We shot in Argentina.
You did?
I was just helping. Yeah. But it was so exciting to be down there and to be making a movie. And
what did you think?
I loved it. It was a thrill. It was such a thrill. I didn't direct it. I just co-wrote the screenplay and was there to kind of help out. And I shot a little role that got cut, but it was there was an actress there that I'm in love with that was in our movie. I wonder if you know who she is.
What's her name?
Selena Font. I think she does a lot of TV. Yeah, she was in the movie. And she was the one person that I didn't really know of before then because we also had like Jennifer Coolidge and Sonia Braga. And I fell in love with Selena. She was so wonderful and I loved her. But
wow, what an experience. I didn't know. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And what did you think of Buenos Aires?
I loved it.
That's my hometown, so be careful.
I loved it. There was some gay club we shot in, but it used to be like an old church. It was a big.
Oh, wow.
Do you know? I don't know what it would have been called, but it was a nightclub now. But you go there and it feels like all this history, but you're dancing to disco music, and like it was really cool. That was a cool
What an
thing.
experience. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and I remember going to get steak, and is it Puerto Madera where all the restaurants are? And
that's a fancy steak. You want to get fancy steak.
Yeah, and at the time the dollar was so strong, so I just remember going to Zara and buying a bunch of clothes and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But
it's changed since then, definitely. But yeah, that's definitely for like a good more than a decade. Like going there with U.S. dollars meant like you were, you felt like Sinatra, like treating his friends to like a party.
But it was just a wonderful adventure, and all our crew was Argentinian. This is my other memory. There was a guy that was I think on the making of crew named Lissandro, and he took me to a tango lesson. A private tango lesson, and we danced, like men dance together. So we were learning tango together, and it was just so like only in Argentina kind of thing, and just very special. It's a very romantic city. It's like it's a very seductive city. Yeah. What's the state of the industry there now? Are there a lot of opportunities to tell stories, or is it?
Like right now. Presently, with the new government, they've really eliminated a lot of the support for national cinema. So a lot of what's happening in the industry right now is mainly focused on like the big streaming platforms.
Yeah.
And because national cinema, independent cinema only existed thanks to the support of this film commission.
Right.
And it's been reduced significantly.
So people are trying to get those Netflix shows or things
exactly.
like that.
That's so, but it is, a much smaller industry in general compared to the U.S. industry, for example.
When you came to LA to go to AFI, what was it like to come here? Had you spent much time in Los Angeles before, or was it all new?
I had never been to LA, and this is so embarrassingly geeky, but I remember I'm landing on the plane, arriving to the first time to LA. This is I've already been accepted to AFI. It's a month before classes start. And I'm blasting John Williams on my headphones on the plane, looking out as I'm landing. And I'm like, wow, this is it. This is so cool, and it really, I was such a huge fan of Mulholland Drive, so I was driving up Mulholland Drive and being wow, I'm in the movie. And so it was really amazing. It's that initial period, where you're I made it. I'm in Hollywood, and then you realize okay, wait, it feels like it's close, but you're still really far in some way. And it's going to take a lot of work to really break into this industry, but still the charm of it really got me, and I really love living here.
Right. The thing is, you can see possibility everywhere.
Yeah.
And then as the years go on, you're like, wow, this is hard.
Yeah.
But you can see it. You can almost
touch
a
mirage.
it. Yeah.
It's like a mirage in the desert, right? You can see it, but it's always elusive because the closer you get to it, the further it seems like it got.
Exactly. What John Williams, do you remember, or just generally his vibe?
I think it's possible I was listening to the Jurassic Park.
It's da, 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 and you're landing.
Doesn't it feel like you're landing in LA for the very first time as a wide-eyed kid from Argentina who just got accepted into literally the film school of his dreams. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. And it was, and it really changed my life.
What did the people in your life in Argentina think of you going to film school in California? Were they go for it?
Yeah. No, people were really, really supportive. I mean, it was, they knew how important it was to me. They knew how much I loved it. I loved film and what that place meant to me. And honestly, my family was incredibly supportive. They put a lot of their life savings to be able to put me through the first year of school. And then fortunately, I was able to get a scholarship for the second year, because otherwise I would have never been able to go to that school.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. When you applied to AFI, what do you submit? Short films, things you've worked on? If you haven't made a film, obviously, how do you get in?
Well, so, AFI has different tracks, right? So they have a directing track, they have a producing track, writing, editing, production design, cinematography. And so as a director, I applied the directing track. And so what you need to do is you have like a couple of essays that you write, you show like a writing sample. And then most importantly, you have like 2 pieces of film. One is like free form, like whatever you want that you've made that is narrative,
right,
that you've shot in like under, I think 15 minutes or something like that. And then the other one is they have like a particular like prompt, right? So my year, it was like the prompt was like a surprise, you know?
Oh, that's your theme. Anything to do with surprise.
Anything you want.
Yeah.
And so you make one specifically for AFI, and the other one you just take whatever the best thing that you did and you show it.
Right on.
So yeah, that was kind of the process, and I was like, here goes nothing, you know, and fortunately
it worked out.
It worked out. Yeah.
What was your surprise that you depicted?
It was a short film, and it's like a very very visual short film, really eerie short film about a lady who is like alone in this house, and she like strangles a bird that keeps like chirping too much, like a bird. She takes it out of the cage and she kills it with her bare hands.
Wow.
And then like she like dresses up like really nicely, and then the surprise is that the owner of the house arrives, and this lady like puts her like maid uniform back and goes back to work. And so she was never the owner of the house, and she just like was so tired of being like under this lady that she like killed.
She kills her bird. That's really good. That could be a feature.
A whole feature? You think a whole feature?
Maybe not. Maybe not. It's a long way. That's a long way, but I'm into it.
Stretch it out. It would be an interesting exercise if we can do it. We can try it.
Yeah. What has it been like to have the journey of this film, Chronicles of a Wandering Saint, the festivals and stuff like that? Has it just been a wild ride?
It has been really wild because, you know, we wrapped up the movie like September of 2022, like finished like the editing and stuff. And, you know, I started submitting to festivals, got a couple of rejections, and I was like, okay, like clearly this is not going to be the movie that does anything for me, you know? Right. And so I made my peace with like, I did this like burial for the movie, like this like ritual where I was like I burned like an object, you know, and I was like, thank you, movie, for everything you've taught me. You know, like I've learned so much. You don't need to do anything more for me than just having made it. You know, like for me, it was the experience of having made it. That's enough. And, you know, and I'm like, cool, I can move on. I'm like, just going to start writing the next movie. Like a week later, we got the South by acceptance letter. And then everything changed.
Everything changed. So like some of the big ones, maybe Sundance or Toronto, like some of the, And Sundance wishes they had your movie now. They're like,
I don't know. I mean, Sundance has some really great movies that year too. But you know, like it's not always about like quality. Sometimes it's like you're building kind of like a slate, you know, to present, and it makes sense. Like programming has so many. It's like a whole art form in itself. So I like. There's no bitterness in any way. But at some point I was like, okay, it's not going to be a festival movie. And that's what I thought. And so this really surprised me. So everything that came afterward was such like an ongoing set of surprises to this day, you know, that it's because my expectations were so low, you know, that everything just kept like, it's like exceeding by a lot my expectations. So the fact that we're opening in theaters in the US is like bewildering, and that, you know, we're able to do that. It has been in the Spirit Award nominations. It just kind of blew my mind, to be completely frank.
I love it. So you said you burnt something as sort of to make peace with it. What did you burn?
Yeah, it was just a piece of paper with like the name of the movie. I was like, thank you. You know, it was like a little ritual. It was like a good like a materialization of an idea. You know, like it helped me kind of release it.
I think that's beautiful. I think it's really kind of beautiful and also kind of sane, because I think
I sound like a crazy person.
No, but here's the thing. I think in any of these creative things that we're pursuing, you got to be able to get up again. It's resilience. It's sticking with it. It's how do you keep going, right? And I think that helped you keep going in a way that, especially if it's your first movie, I could see being like devastated and like, and giving up. Like, but you found a way to kind of keep going, and things turned around.
You have to, because like the truth is, like, there are so many rejections along this road. Like you could look at like our experience with this movie and be like, oh, they got everything they ever wanted. Like they got really lucky. And we did. But there's so many rejections along this journey. Like I can't tell you how many hundreds of rejections at every step of the process. So there's a certain like resilience that you have to build up. Otherwise, like you just can't make it. Talent will never be enough. Like you have to have this perseverance. Otherwise, like you'll just get so sad that you'll give up and you'll forget the reason you make it anyway, which for me has always been like making fun shit with my friends. Like that's literally all I want to do, you know? That
might be the title of this podcast. I always pull a quote, making fun shit with my friends. What strikes me about you is you're young. This is your first movie. You don't have a lot of bravado. You have a humility to you and a sense of humor. And yet your movie is very assured. Like, you know what it is. And I think when you're young, I could be easily swayed like, okay, well, maybe we don't need to do it that way. Or maybe that we don't need to do it that way. Like, you had a confidence in the piece that felt really solid, right? Do you get what I'm going at? Like, where did that come from? And how did you know, like, I trust this vision. I know I'm new. I know this is a weird script. I believe in this and I'm going to see it through the way I want it to be.
I think it's a combination of like one impulse and the other is like a long-term, like craftsmanship. Like it's like the first thing is like the initial thing that got you going about the whole thing, you know, the very first seed that gave you the energy to undertake this endeavor, that idea that's like burning in your mind, that passion for whatever like feeling you want to get to the script. That's like the thing that is the guiding light always, you know, that feeling and keeping that alive. And then second, I think it also is like a testament to the process that we have with my friends with Plenty Good, which is like we have a development workshop. That's kind of the core of our process. And so we workshop the script like 30 times, you know, and so many times the script was too broad comedy or like a heist and too much of this or too much of that. And so you really get to like test and see what the limits of the movie are, what it needs to be. And eventually it finds kind of its place. And it lines up with that initial like spark and it simplifies it and makes it also complex. It's kind of like a really crazy thing, but you have to do like a full circle moment, you know? And that hopefully like at some point your project has the two. And then when you have the two, you're like, okay, we can make this. And it's not, and letting go of perfection. It's like, it's not going to be a perfect movie. It might not be for everybody, but this is the movie that I want to make because this is a movie that I would want to see as a like an audience member, you know? And that's it. And I think you got to trust that all the way through. And I had a teacher who said like, if you're going to go for it and crash and burn and go down with your ship if you have to. But it's better to go down on your terms than like always thinking about what other people would want out of it.
You talked about how your parents helped you with school the first year. What did they think of the movie?
They haven't seen it yet.
Your parents haven't seen the movie yet?
No, they're in Argentina. They're waiting for the Argentinian premiere. So,
and you don't want to send the Vimeo link. No, you want to.
No, of course not.
No, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, okay. I want them to go see it in a movie theater, and it will be coming to Argentina. So they've had to wait, you know, endlessly.
Oh, there's a lot of magic in this movie. A lot of magical realism. Were there moments on set that felt that way? That felt like, oh, that just lined up, or did you felt like, oh, that was a happy accident, or were there magical moments in the making of it?
I feel like that's kind of one of the biggest highs you can get on a movie set, is when you're like, oh my God, wait, what just happened? Like we saw lightning, you know, we captured lightning in a bottle, and it happens hopefully, you know, every now and then on set when you're like, okay, like I know that that part is gonna work, or this moment, you know, of somebody's performance is like, holy shit, like that just happened. That's the take for sure, you know?
Right.
And that's the beauty of making art, like, and making art in the collaborative nature. I'm sure like dancers and like in the dance troupe experience this, you know, where like something in the particular alchemy of the moment with all these different talented people suddenly enter like a flow state together, and something just like lights up. And maybe it doesn't light up the whole time. It just happens here and there, but enough to get you going. And again, I think it has to do with making fun shit with your friends. At some point when everybody's like connected, you feel that spark, and it's like, that's the thing you chase after all the time.
Yeah. I think having that group to support each other when somebody else is, feeling discouraged, the other person can, like having that, I think is so important. And I think that's so exciting for you that you have that with your people.
I think it's really important because like a lot of people think that being a director is like being sure of yourself all the time and knowing exactly what to do all the time. And that's like, could not be further from the truth. I think it's more about knowing kind of the general sense of what you would want it to feel like throughout. Right. And then knowing that you're a human being and that you'll get sad and scared and vulnerable and feel the pressure and all that, and having created the right group and set the right tone for you to fail too, and people to be like, okay, cool, it's fine, let's try it a different way, Yeah. And that you don't have to be this like boss that knows everything all the time. You've hired people that can help you when you're not feeling like Yeah,
that's beautiful. Have any of the reactions at screenings surprised you? Or are there any that are particularly memorable? Somebody said something?
I always find it really moving when somebody comes up to us after a screening and shares like how it affected them personally. Like when people come up to me and are like, this movie is like, I finished the movie and I called my grandma. Like I needed to call my grandma right away,
That's beautiful.
And I told her how much I loved her, and I got chills just remembering that. Or this I remember another person came up to us and was like, I recently lost somebody, and everything that happens in the movie reminds me of how I think about them now that they're gone, and them sharing like a really personal story like that. That stuff is like, that's, you just remember what the magic about movies are, that it's not about like just content, you're just like, you're trying to find that humanity in the other person, like, on the other side of the screen, and when you connect, it's like, it's especially wonderful.
Well, your movie has a lot of that. There's unique things about it, and just in terms of the filmmaking and the way it unfolds, but it's just got so much heart and relatability. Even though I am not an older woman in an Argentine village, thank
you for saying that.
I felt her. So tell people how they can see it or how they can learn more about it.
It will open in Los Angeles at the Lumiere Theater in July 5th. And then it will be playing both at the Lumiere Theater as well as the American Cinematheque that week.
Are you doing Q&As? I want to come to the...
I'm doing Q&As for both.
Okay.
For Lumiere and American Cinematheque. So come, please.
Yes, I will definitely come.
Bring friends. Bring friends.
Here's a shallow question. Does being an AFI alum get you a ticket to the Nicole Kidman AFI Honors Awards ceremony? Which I've been... I mean, that looks
like... we have to pay for it. It's crazy.
But you have to pay. That's not right. It's not right.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that I don't want to get into, because AFI has also been incredibly supportive of our journey.
Right.
But there's just a lot of stuff about the system, I think, in general, that is kind of like that, where you're like, you're like, how is this happening right now?
Yeah.
But it's just part of being an indie filmmaker. You gotta make it work somehow.
It's part of the journey. Here is my final question. Say it's 30 years from now. What's a moment from making this movie that you will always remember?
Wow, that's a great question, man. You're really stumping me on this one. The moment, I guess, the first day, like the first take, where I saw the monitor, and I saw what the movie could look like for the very first time, and seeing like the trucks arrive and feeling the incredible jitters and practically nauseous of nerves, where I'm like, oh, I'm actually directing a movie now. It's this thing that I dreamed about for so long. I think that's always going to stay with me. And premiering and for the very first time seeing like a theater full of people watching a movie, like it's a dream come true. Like that's kind of what I have dreamt about ever since I started on this journey. And it's so addicting to have people to be able to watch something that you made like that. It's so incredible that I want to keep doing that.
I love it. I always say it's my last question. It's not. Do you know what's next?
So I'm working on a couple of scripts right now, and hopefully, one of them will be my first English language film. So I'm hoping that will happen in the near future.
Right on. Well, I look forward to seeing it. I hope to come and meet you at one of these Q&As.
That'd be great, Dennis.
I love your movie. I can't wait to share it with friends and bring them with me. And I hope everyone checks it out and goes and sees it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was really, really fun to talk to you.
Thanks again to Tomás Gómez Bustillo. Go see his movie. It's enchanting if you can. Watch for it wherever you get your movies, whenever it comes out, streaming, whatever. It's just a delight and very inspiring. It just shows that, like, a little imagination and talent can go a long way, even if you don't have a huge budget. And I was very inspired by it. So there's that. All right, so this happened. This past weekend was the Mismatch Game. It was our Taste the Rainbow Pride Edition. And a merry time was had by all. I ordered a $50 suit from Amazon, and it showed up, and I wore it. And was it ill-fitting? Perhaps. But it was super pridey, and I actually considered wearing it once and sending it back, and just getting the money back, because, money's tight. And then I realized that's disgusting, because I sweat so much up there. That is a non-starter. I can't even believe I entertained that idea. But anyway, we had a wonderful cast. We had Felix Pyre as the Mad Hatter. Jackie Clark does this thing called Chucky's Mom, where she plays the stage manager to Chucky from Child's Play. She's always trying to get Chucky more work. He's way more versatile than people think. And she's like, the strike was really hard on Chucky. But we're bouncing back. We had Danny Casillas as Reba, my friend. We also had Julie Brown did Queen Elizabeth, which was fun. And it was fun. We had a Prince William question about the Taylor Swift concert, and that was hilarious. Dante was Christopher Lloyd, and he kept traveling back to the future. And one of the things he said, a warning to time travelers, you're going to want to avoid 2016 to 2024 in the United States. I don't know. It was profound and true. And who am I forgetting? Oh, Nadia Ginsburg is Cher, and she killed it. And she read some live tweets, which I love when she reads Cher's tweets, because Cher's tweets are their own language, and her, reading them aloud is genius, and I love it. We raised over $4,000 for the Gay and Lesbian Center, which is one of the highest single night totals that we've ever had. So it was all good. So our next Mismatch Game is going to be our 20th anniversary. It's on September 28th, and it happens to be the day before my 60th birthday. So we're going to do a big reception after the actual Mismatch Game with cake and dancing, and it's going to be a double celebration. So if you're in LA, I would love it if you came to that. Get your tickets soon, because I think this one's going to sell out. You can go to lalgbtcenter.org and get your tickets there. All right. That's enough for this week. I want to thank Oscar Rosario for mixing the episode. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Placement Music. We'll catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye!